Welcome to Ampedcast, your number one EDM community.
Join us to hear conversations with artists and industry pros as they share stories, tips, and resources
to help you amplify your success in music. Welcome to another episode of Ampedcast. Today I have John Lynx with me, and John and I met not too long ago through a mutual friend in the radio space who just connected us. So it was like a friend of a friend. And then I was super excited to meet you because you're doing some huge things in the Chicago house scene. So I'm excited to share your story, John. So give a little brief introduction of who you are and a little bit about your music.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. As she said, John Lynx, music producer, DJ. Started music when I was very young. At an age of 8, I started on the piano. After that, for a while, I have been picking up DJ, equipment and decks and playing around with it since I was like in 8th grade. So it's at a very young age. So from there, just started working on my production and DJing and doing local parties for schools and all that stuff, home parties, and then I kind of evolved a little bit, as you would say, playing some clubs, circuits in Chicago, and then branching off, playing out of state and stuff. But music is my passion, producing is my passion, and creating music is my passion. So I've been doing it for quite some time, a little over a decade or so, and very happy where it's taken me. And I really love what I do, and I love helping out other people while I'm doing it as well.
Thank you for that quick backstory, and it just really speaks through to your music for sure.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. Definitely. So, like I said, music is the key to my heart, like others, and it can make you feel a certain way, and that's where I take all of my ideas and creativity. So whatever I'm feeling that day, that's coming out in my music, and I just like the way that goes hand in hand.
That's really cool. It's you've heard of the love languages, right?
Yes, I have.
you know, I always say music is my love language.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I can relate.
Yes, it's so true. And, I kind of want to dive into, where you got started. You gave a little brief, you've been doing this for a while, but, as you grow into the house scene, what kind of took you down that path of house music? Or have you, what kind of genres are you playing right now? Is it strictly house? Dive into what you're kind of currently working on.
Right. Well, I'm working on a lot of things. House is awesome, obviously, and I went down that path because everybody in Chicago grew up on house music. So we always pay homage to the people before us. So obviously, as a child, you're surrounded by it. Everybody's listening to it out here. There's been stories on, numerous stories on like Frankie Knuckles and all these other guys, which have been mentioned millions of times. So kind of grew up around the scene of house just by, through friends and, hanging out and parties. But I do a lot of film scoring, and a lot of people probably don't know that. So, I do a lot of cinematic type of music, and I try to have that shine in my music. Although I do, play house sets, especially in Chicago, because tech house and house music is really the scene out here. There is still a lot of things going on with my style of music. So I'm really into more of progressive house, melodic deep house, and techno, such as, styles of, I want to say, Gorgon City, Camel Fat, Tale of Us, stuff like that. So that's really what I'm gearing myself for, and I think everyone should identify themselves with some staple point for them, like who identifies you when you come out to see a John Lynx show or whoever else is DJing their shows. What are you going to see? And that's what I'm trying to give them by creating my music out there. So, to sum it up, melodic deep house and techno is kind of what I'm making right now. So,
That is very cool. And you mentioned something that I really want to dive into. And that is, you are doing cinematic work too. And that tells me a lot about, what you're doing with your music because you're thinking outside the box, and I think this is where a lot of artists get stuck. They think the only way to go is booking gigs and doing shows, but you're kind of creating these sources of income and sources of revenue and sources of creativity as well through multiple facets. Can you explain the benefits of artists exploring those kind of options, or even just like diving into other options besides like just like being on stage, but like other options to grow their music?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many opportunities out there. And this is why I always tell everybody who I'm mentoring, which I have a lot in Chicago I'm working with, really great people, by the way. And I tell them, look, don't pigeonhole yourself. Make the kind of music out there that you want to make, but there is something outside of house music. You can take that music and take your craft, and you can go apply for sync licensing deals and have your music featured in commercials and shows and movies. And they actually, people do really well at that stuff, so it's not just going out about playing shows and showcasing your music. There's more to it. And that's such a satisfying feeling to have your music featured on shows or TV. So don't pigeonhole yourself, guys. If you're going to go out there and do it, there's other avenues just besides playing shows and being on Spotify out there for you. I'm a very strong believer of that.
That's really powerful, and that speaks a lot for, your music, and just like that, again, that thinking as an entrepreneur as well as a kind of a creative entrepreneur in the scene. And you touched on mentoring. Is mentoring something that you've been doing for a long time now, or how does that look like? How did you get started in mentoring?
Let's see. I haven't been doing it too long. I've been so busy with trying to work on, film scoring and, other things. But as I said, I have a lot of guys out here in Chicago that they want to produce. They don't know how to produce. They don't even know where to get their music out as far as streaming media platforms. So I've been taking a lot of people under my wing in Chicago, and I totally believe in helping. It's all a networking, as you know. And so I have a lot of studio sessions with newer guys, older guys, and I really help them improve their craft, whether it's somebody who's been doing it for 5 years or somebody just starting out. And now I'm doing it so much, I'm having a little bit less time on doing my own music and releasing my own stuff. But I feel like if they get something signed and I'm, a part of that, it's kind of like we all win. So I've been doing this for, I don't know, a little over a year or two, maybe a little more. But it's so rewarding to see other people succeed. It's not just about me. I just feel like it's everyone that's good people out there should really succeed in their music and love what they do.
That is super cool because it's really, you're kind of like coming at it from like we all rise together approach. And by mentoring and giving back and sharing that knowledge you've gained, it's also helping others grow as well. So, how important is building a strong community to you as an artist?
Oh, it's huge. A lot of bookings, as you know, it's kind of like who you know, not about how good you are sometimes or what you can do. So the bigger you have as far as networking in your community, the more people are actually going to understand what you're trying to accomplish with your music and able to get you heard. Um, some of the best producers out there and best DJs out there, they'll never have their stuff heard unless they go out there and network. And I'm a firm believer in that. You have to network because if you don't, you're going to be behind your desk making the best music that you possibly can and some of the best stuff that nobody's ever going to hear because you're not out there networking. So I'm so strongly into believing that, you have to go out there, you have to get yourself exposed, and you have to come yourself, at a very professional manner. And if you do that, you will get more opportunities than you would if you were just making music and thinking it's going to get heard, by putting it on SoundCloud. I mean, it happens, but it's very rare where somebody's going to get a lot of exposure just by putting stuff out there like that.
Very true. And you bring up a good point about making sure you grow your network and do the networking. And there's a lot of artists that maybe are introverted or struggle with the putting themselves out there portion. Do you have any tips or advice on how an artist can get more comfortable with that side of things?
Yeah. I know a lot of guys like that. And I tell them, this is what I tell them. Look, you at this point, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So whether you're uncomfortable, if you say something that's not the right way to say it, it doesn't matter. At least you're trying. So unless you take that initiative, you're not going to succeed with anything. But you've got to take it. You've got to take that chance because you have nothing to lose. And when I tell them that, it just builds up a little bit more confidence and they go ahead and take that chance. And there have been some really successful artists out here that have done things, by going up to people. You never know.
You never know. And that, it kind of reminds me, I think of an artist and that first time they get on the stage and the first time they or their first big mess up on the decks or
Yeah.
something, and it's like it's the same thing. It's like once you kind of rinse and repeat, you're able to get more comfortable with putting yourself out there, going to a networking event, talking to other artists or promoters and things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a chain reaction in your mind. Once you do it and things go well and you get your first opportunity, then somebody who's very shy is not so shy anymore and they don't have a problem doing it more and more often. Then you're right, it becomes routine and it's kind of secondhand nature, to them after so much time has passed. So,
That's so true. And it's so nice to hear that. Like, that's something that is encouraging to other artists, because that can be a scary part of getting out there. And it's like being able to talk about your music and talk about who you are, and also, collaborate. Collaborations are huge. And I know you've had some really great collaborations, especially in this last year. Can you share a story of like a collaboration that you had that would have not happened if you didn't put yourself out there?
um, let's see here. Well, I think the last one was somebody that I'm helping in the studio. Very good guy. His name is Alex Kislov. We've always run across each other's paths, years ago. And he's one of the guys where, he's got a different kind of style than I do. But, we just said, hey, let's come up with something cool. Let's go in the studio, let's brainstorm. And it worked out perfect. I don't collab very often, so this is kind of a first time thing for me. Other than featured vocalist, because I love working with vocalists. And, it just so happened the song's doing really well. It was signed with EDX's label and it's still growing and it's still getting a lot of response and a lot of attention, and it's one of my favorite tracks right now. So collabing is definitely not a bad thing. It's going to get more doors open for you because if you collab, that style of the artist may not have the same kind of following as your style of people who like your music. So new people get to know who you are and you get to grow a little bit more together, and that's one of the coolest things.
It really does create that ripple effect, and it's like you can combine your audiences together and get new ears on your music, and then maybe share some of your fans with the other person you collaborate with, whether it be a vocalist or another producer or something like that. So I think that's a really great tip for artists, especially. Hey, and then you have someone to go networking with too, so you don't have to be as nervous because you have a
Absolutely. Yeah, it all helps out. I mean, people should be like that. I think if everyone would just play their part in the industry, and it's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies, unfortunately. But if you get in with good people, you should do well. But you're only as good as your team or your people you surround yourself with. So just make sure you're surrounding yourself with good people. And Chicago's pretty good. I mean, Chicago is very tight, very, it's very secluded, but once you're in that circle, people always are going to go out of their way for you. And that's one of the things I love about Chicago.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about Chicago itself. I know it's the birthplace of house music. And so I think that's a really cool, it's just such a cool history about Chicago. And so, how would you say being in Chicago has influenced your career as an artist?
Um, I think Chicago has done that for me for electronic music just because of all these classic house hits. Like Move Your Body was a very old song, but it's still being remixed these days. And a lot of Chicago music is being remixed these days by a lot of artists. So just being around this, being in these nightclubs, playing in these nightclubs, like when I play Spy Bar, it's an iconic club, and so many people have come in and out of there. A lot of Chicago house legends, like Green Velvet, used to be Cashmere. So being around Chicago, there's just a different vibe. And I play in other places. LA is great. Everywhere I go, it doesn't matter. They all have their own staple point, and they're just all good in their own way. I've been to Austin, but I want to go back because I know it's growing and I heard so much good things about it. So, but I think identifying one place is just always a different vibe. Chicago for me, just it's got a lot to it. It's just got good feeling and good memories, and growing up here, I'm a little biased, but it's for me, it's my top place to play, even though I'm playing here quite a bit still.
Yes, go Bears, right?
Yeah, right.
Uh,
And not only that, we've had so many good artists come out of here for Chicago for house music. I mean, John Summit is a perfect example of that. He used to play at some of Alex's boat parties where, I was just talking about him on a collab. So he started off and he made those connections and he worked his ass off in the studio. And now this guy's headlining everywhere, touring all over the place. And he's living proof of a good success story because he's the one that went out there and networked and made connections and didn't stop. I mean, I think he sent defected 50 songs until they finally signed one. And it's just perseverance and not giving up. So he's a good example of that. But a lot of good artists come out of Chicago in house music.
that is so true. And you brought up a really great point of like that perseverance and keep going. And that's where, when you hear about overnight success or quote, quote, it's actually like artists have been on the grind for like 10, 15, maybe 20 years before they get that
Absolutely.
that break. Can you share a bit about your journey as a whole? Like what's that iceberg look for like for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have been on the grind for a long time, and it took a while. I sent off demos everywhere, and one nowadays it's a little bit harder because of social media. It's not even really about how good your music is for a lot of these bigger labels. It's about how many followers you have. So if you got, I don't know, 1 million followers, of course they're going to sign you. But if you're just starting out, they may not. So my advice is start with the smaller labels. Work your way up, build your following, and that's kind of how my path was. I had to build my following. I had to build my brand. I had to shop and shop and shop. I self released a lot of my music in the beginning, and it's paying off because I'm getting more of a following, more of an audience. People are genuinely coming to my social media platforms saying that they love my music. That's the best feeling in the world. Um, but then I started, being noticed, and I got signed to some decent labels. Tunes has treated me very, very well. And then some of the other DJs started hearing my music, such as Nora and Pure and EDX, Gorgon City. They're playing my stuff now. But it didn't come overnight. I really worked hard and I had to establish myself first. So, for all the newer artists that haven't done anything yet to get word to where they want to go, don't give up because a lot of those guys don't see success quick enough and they give up, saying this is never going to happen for me. But that's not true. If you keep it up and going and going and going, you're eventually going to have success. I'm a firm believer in that. And I guess I'm living proof to some extent. I mean, I'm not where I want to be 100% yet, but I'm to the point where I'm happy. I wake up happy every day to know what I've got going on.
That's really, really inspiring, especially hearing your real story. And I'd like to dive into what is one roadblock or hurdle that you were challenged with within your career that you overcame?
Um, Honestly, getting booked at clubs. Again, music was great when I first started. A lot of streams built my audience, but getting into certain clubs and that was my biggest hurdle because you have to know the right gatekeepers. It's funny now because one of the guys who was not having it, he was just having all the people he knew go into the clubs and play for him, and continue to do sets over and over every night. And even though my music was blowing up, he just, a tight knit circle, like I said. Now I'm actually working with him in the studio and doing some production with him because he wants to learn music. So that was a big hurdle. But once I got there and started getting content and uploading stuff, people are saying, wait, this guy's the real deal. His sets are going good. Word of mouth, gets around. And so that was a really big hurdle. Getting in that club circuit, it's very hard. You're just not going to say, hey, I'm doing good. Book me. And it doesn't happen like that. You just kind of got to know the right people, and definitely a big hurdle for me. That and one other thing is getting on a major label. You have
Mm.
to keep going. Those are the two biggest hurdles in music you're going to find: getting shows and getting your music signed to some good labels. And
Mm.
that's going to be for a lot of people, you know. But again, don't give up. That's what I keep saying.
So when an artist is starting out, how important is it to create like a professional image behind your music? Do you think that plays into the success of where you go with your music?
I think so. It goes hand in hand nowadays. I always tell people um, they don't know when they're first starting off, and I'm like, you have to have everything professional. You have to have good content. You have to have good music. You have to have a great image. You have to carry yourself in a certain manner, and just again be all around professional, and it's going to lead to more success. Um, First thing people are going to do, again, it's just such a social media driven industry these days, is they're going to go and see your content. And if you've got content that just doesn't make sense or show who you are as a brand, nobody's going to take interest, you know? But if you're out there having content of you in the studio and working and showing how you're creating tracks, that's cool. A&R people want to see stuff like that. They want to know who you are and how you're doing it, and how creative you are. And that's going to give you the upper hand. So make sure you're really good on your current and it's up to date, and it's cool stuff, you know? Not just selfies all the time of you, I don't know, in a car or something, I mean, I see that way too much, and I tell these guys, if you're a producer, make sure you don't cheapen your brand. Make sure you show these people who you are. And that's why I encourage that kind of stuff. I love cool content, from people. I love looking at that stuff. And so do A&R people. So make sure it's clean.
This is so true. It really makes a difference how you carry yourself, and also and knowing that people fall in love with people. So
Mhm.
let some of your personality show through, and they want to see the artist behind the decks. They want to get to know you as a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I love to see some like for instance, Carmine Conti from Tale of Us. He's always doing stuff. I like looking at his content more than I do listening to his stuff because it's just so cool. He's a great artist, and but he's putting cool stuff out there. And there's a lot of other people that are putting cool stuff out there that aren't as big, but those are the kind of people that are going to get noticed for what they're doing. It's just creativity.
That is so true. And John, this has been such a fun conversation. I want to dive into a little headliner hot seat, which is just some like top of mind answers to a couple of questions. This is like kind of a rapid fire section. So are you ready
Sure.
to be in the headliner hot seat?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1 is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to another artist who may be just starting on their journey?
I will say 3 words to them: don't give up.
Yes, I love that. Question number 2 is, what is something that's inspired you, like whether it be a book or a piece of content, maybe a podcast, something that's helped you on your journey?
Oh wow, that's a good question. My gosh. Honestly, certain artists, just listening to certain artists is something that inspires me on my journey. To hear what they do and how they're doing it motivates the hell out of me. Um, how some people can be so creative, that drives me. Like, wow, if they can do that kind of stuff, I can do that kind of stuff. So listening to certain people's music, that's really what gives me motivation to keep going, honestly.
Oh, I love that. And number three is, if there was one part of your musical career currently that you are working on that you could drastically improve on tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Shopping more for my own music instead of helping everyone else out and finding the balance to time. I just, now I'm helping, I feel so good helping people out that it's just limiting me. And balance of time, I think. I just need to really just, you know, get my time a little bit better than I should, make time for myself.
I am guilty of that myself, and
Yeah, I'm sure you're so busy.
I always try to remind myself, fill my own cup, and then that cup overflows to others.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, which you're living proof just like me. But yeah, that's definitely it. That's my pet peeve to myself.
Oh, it's one we're always working on. Well, you were amazing. Headliner hot seat questions. I really appreciate those honest answers. And I think
Yeah,
there's so many people that can relate to this episode that we've put together, all this great content. So, John, before we wrap up with our final question, I would love to get people connected with you and your music. So drop all of your content or your all of your social media handles here.
yeah, very easy. Instagram at John Lynx Music. Same thing with Facebook. Pretty much everything at John Lynx Music. So Lynx, because people always spell it different, but JohnLynx. So anything there, come find me, see where I'm playing next, stay updated for some new music, which I have a ton in the works. I'd love to have some new people listen to my stuff, and that's about it. And keep driving, people. Keep going. Keep pushing.
Keep pushing. So, our final question before we wrap up is, what is most inspiring in your music today, to you today?
Um, I want to say positivity, just something uplifting, and where you can actually turn something on, and it doesn't sound like everything else that's being played out there. There's so much out there that sounds similar. So, what I really inspire to do is identify myself as who I am and who I want to be, and I want to make music that feels good. So, I always tell myself something. I said, make music that's meaningful, make music that means something, not just what everybody else is doing, because you can hear tons and thousands of songs, but make something that counts. And that's kind of the music that, I'm trying to put out myself right now.
Oh, that is so inspiring. John, thanks again for being on the show. And for everyone listening out there, be sure to like and subscribe for more episodes like this, because we want to help you grow in your career. We want to help you fall and stay in love with music. So thank you so much, John, for your time today.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me, Kay.